Defendants Michael Harmon and Timothy Rist were picked up by more police detectives over the weekend. Both suspects were transferred to the Cleveland County Jail on Saturday. They were scheduled for arraignment this afternoon, but paperwork on the pair didn't arrive until late in the day. After examining the evidence, the Cleveland County District Attorney sent 2 assistants to ask District Judge Preston Trimble to postpone the arraignment by 1 day. Judge Trimble granted the request.
District Attorney Kay Huff asked for the extension to allow police detectives more time to collect and analyze evidence taken from the crime scene, because she says that right now she doubts she has enough evidence to take these 2 defendants to trial.
There is doubt in my mind at this point as to whether there's enough evidence at this point to file charges, yes.
What will happen if these 2 suspects are not charged by tomorrow afternoon?
If they're not filed by tomorrow afternoon, I'm sure they'll be released from jail. We had to get a motion today in order to ask that they be held until tomorrow afternoon.
Evidence analysis should be complete tomorrow afternoon. At that time, D.A. Huff will decide whether or not to prosecute Harmon and Rist. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at the Cleveland County Courthouse. More police detectives had arrested 2 suspects in connection with Tammy Carter's death. The Cleveland County District Attorney's Office chose to file first-degree murder charges against only 1 suspect, 20-year-old Michael Eugene Harmon. Special District Court Judge Gary Purcell read Harmon his rights. Judge Purcell asked the defendant if he had any ties to Cleveland County. When he said no, the judge ordered Harmon held without bond. Purcell set an April 15th hearing to decide whether the defendant needs a preliminary hearing. The DA's office decided not to file first-degree murder charges at this time against another suspect, 23-year-old Timothy Rist. Shortly before 5 p.m., Rist was whisked out the courthouse back door by his attorneys. Prosecutors say Rist is definitely still a suspect. Authorities still have the option of filing charges against Rist and another unnamed suspect at a future date. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at the Cleveland County Courthouse. The Cleveland County District Attorney's Office chose to file first-degree murder charges against 20-year-old Michael Eugene Harmon. Harmon was originally supposed to be arraigned yesterday, but prosecutors wanted to wait until they received more evidence linking him to Tammy Carter's murder. This afternoon, they got the evidence necessary to place Harmon at the crime scene. Cleveland County Special Judge Gary Purcell read Harmon his rights and ordered him held without bond. Judge Purcell set an April 15th hearing to decide whether the defendant needs a preliminary hearing. Meanwhile, the Cleveland County District Attorney's Office decided not to file first-degree murder charges at this time against another suspect, 23-year-old Timothy Rist.
There's, at this point, more evidence to indicate Mr. Harmon's culpability, we feel, than there is Mr. Rist. There's a possibility that he and or some other person could be charged. Again, whatever the investigation reveals will determine what our next step is.
Rist was released to his attorney shortly before 5 o'clock. Authorities plan to keep close tabs on his whereabouts in case they uncover some new evidence during their investigation. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at the Cleveland County Courthouse.
The criminal record of Patrick Earley is so long it would be impossible for me to document it in a short news story. But he has been in and out of jail since 1946.
He is now in jail in Oklahoma City on drug-related charges, but it appears he has been involved in more than drugs. In things like gambling, he has been arrested countless times, convicted several. In 1946 for auto theft. 1950, arrested for robbery and murder. He got 10 to 21 years for armed robbery and was paroled in 1965. His criminal history goes on. In 1972, he was convicted of interstate racketeering and conspiring to use explosives. He was sent to a federal prison and was paroled in 1980. District Attorney Bob Macy says Earley is one of the most dangerous men arrested during his tenure. Earley is also a suspect in the murder of Tulsa millionaire Roger Wheeler.
He is considered a suspect, one of several, in the killing of Roger Wheeler, the industrialist in Tulsa. And the Tulsa Police Department is checking into that at this time.
Tulsa police think Earley operated with Dennis Fletcher, a bail bondsman who was arrested in Oklahoma City last November for stolen property. Macy says he is pleased an alleged major crime figure is behind bars.
Earley was arrested in Fort Cobb, and Carol Lambert has more on that story.
Patrick Henry Earley has lived here in the southwest part of the state during the past year. But it seems a lot of people in the neighboring towns don't know Mr. Earley or have only met him when they've gone to the Fort Cobb Marina to buy their fishing license.
I don't personally know this gentleman, but I've met him in February when I went out to the Fort Cobb Lake area to purchase a fishing license at the Fort Cobb Marina, the lake marina there on the lake.
What was he like?
He seemed to be a pretty nice gentleman to me. He never was rude or got out of hand in any way. He joked around a little bit about the fishing weather. I asked him a couple of questions about where would be a nice location to fish out there on the lake, and he suggested a couple of places.
This is the state fishing license that was issued to the police chief, and as you can see, it was signed by Patrick Earley. Action 4 has learned that Earley's live-in roommate, Rebecca Long, leased this marina on Cobb Creek Reservoir last September. But according to townspeople in the area, Earley actually ran the place until he was arrested here last Monday. Carol Lambert, Action 4, the Cobb Creek Reservoir.
This Easter, you're going to be hearing a lot about all people are created equal. Well, unfortunately, not all are equally born. And that's what the Special Olympics is all about, to give those some kind of self-assurance and confidence. I'd like you to meet Special Olympian Stephen Ingram. He loves the standing broad jump. And he loves to throw the softball. Self-esteem and self-confidence. The Special Olympics wouldn't happen successfully if it weren't for volunteers, parents, adults, coaches, huggers. Some sections of the state don't have Special Olympics, but maybe someday, for all those who could really use it, there will be a Special Olympics.
Think you're gonna do all right running, though?
Yes.
Think you're gonna beat everybody? Great.
Yes.
Good luck.
Okay. Good luck to you, too.
Monty Mavity wants to be a champion cowboy. Monty spent this weekend learning how. He went to a riding school taught by world champion bronc rider Bobby Berger. Berger would be the first to say that rodeoing isn't for everybody.
You sit in your living room and watch the National Finals rodeo on TV and they talk about the big money, it looks like fun, but when you get out here in the dirt and get busted a few times, you realize that maybe that job you had the possibilities of getting looks a little better, looks more secure. It's a risky business.
See, what was this horse like?
She goes out there and she goes high and gets her head low.
Okay, you might want to give him just a little over average. But he's not one of those wild horses, so he won't take that much rain, but I might go ahead and give him 2 or 3.
Monty has a lot of confidence. but he realizes he needs more training, the kind of training only someone with Berger's years of experience can provide. Monty's ridden before, so he knows what he wants to do before he comes out of the chute.
Just trying to keep my head clear, just staying calm, mostly, not letting your nerves or anything get to you so you freeze up out there. It's kind of a calm and just determination is what you got to have. That you just want to just get out there and get it done.
I tell you what, there just isn't an easy way to learn how to become a rodeo star without getting busted out here a few times, and nobody can really predict what the animals are going to do.
So sometimes things don't work out exactly as planned. But that's almost expected at Bobby Berger's school, a true school of hard knocks. Bill Ross, Action 4, at the OK Corral in Hera.
A fire that did about $85,000 damage broke out about 2:30 Sunday morning at the Parkview Parochial School on Northeastern. It apparently began in a heating unit in the gym, which is also an auditorium, and so the stage, musical instruments, and gym equipment were all ruined. It took dozens of firefighters about 2 hours to extinguish the blaze, but the smoke was so heavy it filtered into the school cafeteria and saturated the walls and tables with a blackish film. Because of that, the cafeteria won't be usable for several days. So the 100 students are bringing their own lunches. The closing of the cafeteria really won't disrupt their routine too much, other than eating in their classrooms, which many seem to enjoy. The school is still furnishing milk. The freezer that was in the school cafeteria is working remarkably well. The only other inconvenience might be the smell of smoke. Other than that, the children in grades 1 through 10 feel fortunate to have their school, and they consider it a blessing that no one was hurt. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the Parkview Adventist School.
The Oklahoma City State Fair is attracting more and more people every year who end up spending millions of dollars. And with that kind of business, the City Council doesn't think it should have to subsidize the fair's operational costs. Council members would also like one yearly contract between the city and Fair Board instead of an 11-month and a 1-month contract. City officials are paying more than $500,000 for utilities and upkeep at the fair and feel the money could be better spent.
So the city has to look at the overall operation of the community, not just what the fair involves. And we are subsidizing the fair to the extent of something like $750,000 a year. And the fair is making money, and we feel that they ought to carry their own load.
The Fair Board and City Council say progress has been made toward reaching an agreement to please both sides. Fair Board members are warning the city that making major changes in a new contract could do more harm than good. Despite their differences, the Fair Board and Council do share one common goal, making sure the fair stays profitable. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
Double selling of inmates was okayed last December. Over 600 inmates would be put in 300 cells in 4 state prisons. But a huge influx of prisoners from county jails may force the Corrections Department to go over that limit. The department now wants an extension to double cell, maybe for as long as 3.5 years. But the Attorney General thinks the Corrections Department is playing games. In other words, why not admit overcrowding is a never-ending problem? Why not just double cell permanently? The Corrections Director explains his line of reasoning against that idea this way.
What it does, it challenges the entire premise of the battle case and throws us back to sort of base one, because double selling is only one issue. We had stipulated to conditions of confinement and standards, whether or not they be American Correctional Association standards or the American Public Health Association standards. And we stipulated to various conditions that we would comply with. Double selling would violate many of those conditions.
So we would be back to negotiating conditions of confinement and the quality of life and all the other issues related to the court order.
So what the Corrections Department is saying is that if the state wants to double cell inmates permanently, that decision must come from the governor and lawmakers. All parties agree they'd like to avoid another court case, but if the double celling issue isn't solved soon, it might end up being another court case. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the state capitol.
Well, that bus was over 30 minutes late, and I tried to call the school and no answer. And I called the transportation department, and they told me that the bus was in an accident, but another one went out to pick up the kids. And when the other bus came, then my little boy got off, and they were all hollering that the girls were gone to the hospital. And
Water maintenance crews had their work cut out for them early this morning when one of Norman's main water lines burst shortly after 2, sending gushing water through a half-mile residential area down Classen from Boyd to Sims. The water broke through asphalt, buckling streets and sidewalks in its path. In some places, the water stood 7 to 8 inches high, flooding yards and gardens. But while the water uncontrollably gushed through the area, crews worked frantically to tap the broken main.
Well, it's probably an old line. We have an old main here that's probably gives the trouble.
Repair crews hope to have a new line laid by early morning and restore water to those affected homes.
That'd be 4, 5, 6 hours before we get it repaired.
So while it will take a little April sunshine to dry out the flooded areas, residents should have their water back on in no time. Debbie Mash, Action 4 in Norman.
The morning after the raid, the Oklahoma City Police Lab was taking stock of the night's work. The raid had resulted in the arrest of 5 people, a couple living near Chandler and 3 Oklahoma City men, and the confiscation of 47 pounds of finished PCP. They also found equipment and chemicals to process an additional 50 pounds. Street value on the drug is estimated at nearly $6 million. The Oklahoma City investigation has been going on for 10 months and has spread from California to Louisiana. In November, police closed another plant in New Orleans, and they say the Chandler bust is a substantial one.
This laboratory was a major supplier of illicit PCP for the entire southwest United States. It is actually 3 times as large, or rather the capability and the amount of narcotics confiscated was 3 times that from the lab in New Orleans.
Police say they believe this PCP lab started shortly after they closed a lab down in New Orleans. Now that they've stopped this lab, they won't say whether they're expecting another one to begin operations. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4, outside of Chandler.
Thousands of babies each year are born to near babes themselves. In Oklahoma, 20% of all births last year were to teenagers. The problem is evident. The solutions apparently aren't. A new government regulation would mandate that teenagers have parental consent before receiving, including birth control. The local Planned Parenthood organization is planning to sidestep that government regulation. They will give minors health care, but not with government funds.
It is my belief that that is perfectly within the regulations. And as I read the regulations, there's no requirement that you serve people, certain classes of people, such as minors, that you can decide with that federal money not to serve young people. And it would be my hope that we can work out a contract in this affiliate. And particularly, I have enclosed in your packet the policy and the procedure that we use in Oklahoma City. And I think as you
The workers at the General Motors plant here in Oklahoma City are having to relearn their jobs after a complete retooling of the plant. Along with the X-bodied Chevy Citations, the plant will now assemble A-bodied cars such as the Buick Century and Chevrolet Celebrity. The A-bodied cars are bigger than the X-bodied ones, and so the workers have added responsibility to learn new skills.
This will be the only plant in the United States building two different size cars on the same assembly line, and that gives us twice the opportunity to build cars. We're real pleased with that.
Does that pose any particular problem when you have two different kinds of cars to contend with?
It causes more parts to be in the plant, and that's one reason we need to train the people. They have a greater selection of parts to choose from when a car comes by them. We have just 3 car lines, and they have a greater selection of parts.
Once the entire 3,000 workers are back on their shifts next week, it'll take an additional 6 weeks to get all of the kinks worked out. Then some 75 cars an hour will move off the line. GM workers laid off their jobs since January 15th will no doubt be happy to come back to their old jobs, but now with new responsibilities. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the General Motors plant.
A heated argument ended up with 2 people dead. An Oklahoma City man chased his estranged wife out of their home with a .357 Magnum pistol. He shot at her at least twice before she was able to duck inside a neighbor's garage. A police spokesman tells what happened next.
The woman apparently ran down here when her husband threatened her with a gun. He followed her with a pistol and followed her into this duplex where he first shot her and then shot himself.
Police say the woman was able to run only a few houses away before she was cornered inside the neighbor's home. It just so happened all the shooting took place inside the home of Agent Ken Letterman with the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. The agent's wife was at home when all the shooting started, but she was able to escape unharmed through another door. Both victims have been identified as 45-year-old Bob Hewitt and 43-year-old Sharon Hewitt, who were recently divorced. They were pronounced dead on the scene. Officials also say the couple did have children who lived with their mother, but they were at school when the incident occurred. Ed Stewart, Action 4 in Northwest Oklahoma City.
Attorneys Mike Gasaway and Carl Hughes filed the suit on behalf of 3 taxpayers who felt the school board was not spending money the way it should be. One of those, Jerry Reagan, a mother of 3 at Star Spencer High, has collected loads of documents detailing school expenditures. She says at one point the school system spent $70,000 for 5 portable toilets. And she says money from the last bond issue never went to the areas intended. Now she questions Dr. Payzant and his leadership.
If I were him, I would probably go somewhere else to a more quiet situation. It's a way, the only way, that we have to show the board, show the superintendent that we intend to have the answers for the questions we've asked.
Dr. Payzant said he and the school board will have no comment about this lawsuit until their attorney has had a chance to look at it. Mrs. Reagan said that she and the 2 other taxpayers came here to this very building and complained about these problems to the school board during a meeting, but that no one listened. She thinks she has their attention now. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the School Administration Building.
More police detectives plan to come here to Kingfisher tomorrow. They want to question a young man being held here in the Kingfisher County Jail. More police believe this young man just might be the suspect they've been looking for in the killing of Tammy Carter. Police want to question 20-year-old Bobby Jo Standridge, Jr. Standridge was arrested in eastern Oklahoma earlier this week on a violation of probation charge. Kingfisher County records indicate Standridge was serving a 5-year probated sentence for stealing a pickup truck last November. Those records also show that Standridge lived at 2600 Yorkshire and Moore at that time. That's just 3 blocks away from his buddy, Michael Harmon. Harmon is awaiting a preliminary hearing on charges he murdered Tammy Carter. Standridge will stand before Kingfisher County District Court Judge Robert Lovell tomorrow to explain why his suspended sentence should not be revoked. Cleveland County prosecutors are expected to make a decision soon on whether to file first-degree murder charges against Standridge. Scott Wallace, Action 4 in Kingfisher.
Gee, I enjoyed the music. It was really tough for me not to stand during the state song in Oklahoma. I passed, as they mentioned, I introduced the bill that made that the state song, and no one would stand up, so I authored a resolution requiring every proud Oklahoman to stand when they heard their state song. And then to be told to remain seated kind of made me feel like it was really tough for me not to stand during the state song in Oklahoma.
The group would be the Master of Ceremonies, who was known as Mr. Interlocutor, and of course he was
Well, as soon as we get it, you don't want to go much closer. But they're making us move back.
Well, if we had this over in town, yes, we would have a bigger problem than you have here. In the suburbs, of course, we've got a better go at it. If it was over in town, yes, we would have many people moving out more so than what we've had to do out here. And it would be several hours before they could go back in, and then after that, of course, there would be several utility companies involved in checking and rechecking. This thing is a cross-country pipeline. We have them all over the country. This one is secure, but until it got with the digger.